Honourable Speaker, and I thank the Honourable Member for that question. Honourable Speaker, as I speak, there's now nearly 25 million cases of COVID-19 around the world, with the fatality reaching nearly 1 million. I'd like to brief this August House on our stats. We've had 28 cases. At the moment, there's only 4 active cases. 22 have recovered, and we had 2 border quarantine cases that passed on. We're also aware that both of them, as you know, are both over 60 years old. We all know the susceptibility and the vulnerability that people in that age group and also comorbidities have to COVID-19. Total tests done now is 7,986, nearly 8,000. Tests per 1,000 people is 9, 7 days rolling average is 50, and our test positivity is 0.4%. We actually, with New Zealand, have one of the highest test positivity in the world, in Australia. And total test per confirmed case is 282. In the meantime, we continue to remain vigilant and alert, and this is because in our region, Australia and New Zealand are both contending with community transmission, as well as Papua New Guinea and French Polynesia. In responding to the potential threats brought about by the current pandemic, we established our National Health Task Force, and also we've been working hand in hand with WHO and SPC, and meeting also with FNU professors on areas in which they can make technical contributions. Honourable Speaker, I've talked about how we have the COVID-19 Incident Management Team, and the former General Manager is now the Acting Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Health. And Dr. Ana Tambua from Sierra Namosi, Subdivision Medical Officer, is now the new General Manager of the IMT, and Dr. Alisa Saukan continues in her role as Head of Health Protection. The health workforce and health facilities continues to be in a state of readiness for any escalation of COVID-19 cases, and the IMT is tasked to ensure that there is adequate capacity and resources to respond to this in the 4 divisions. We are continuing to remodel our services in the new normal, as with everyone else in Fiji is doing in learning how we need to be able to function in this new normal. Honourable Speaker, as you're also aware, we've been sharing the knowledge and practical experiences of COVID-19 for both the community and also the safety of our staff that are looking after patients, and the clinical management is being shared regularly. The government, in its wisdom, feels it necessary to embrace the initiative to ensure our people on the ground and also in remote areas are equipped and protected. Honourable Speaker, the Fijian COVID-safe economic recovery framework was rolled out as a 3-phased approach to the COVID-safe economic recovery. This framework is based on the core principles of preventing the importation of the virus, ensuring health system readiness, and COVID-proofing Fijian businesses and society at large. And this has been discussed with the Minister for Economy, the Honourable Minister for Economy, in his budget speech, and also in other opportunities that have been available in this August House. The goal of the framework is to break potential chains of viral transmission before they take hold, creating a new normal that allows economic activity to safely resume in a manner that protects against a large-scale COVID outbreak. The measures within the framework call for basic hygiene, infection control, physical distancing, adherence to COVID-safe operational businesses, in businesses, schools, houses of worship, and other areas. We also know the impacts of COVID-19 go beyond the health sector, and this task force consists of the Ministry of Economy, the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Commerce and Trade, and other agencies. There are also other co-opted members. One of the innovative ideas, and probably the first in the world, is the establishment of our Blue Lanes initiative, with which we have continued to operate safely and successfully by partnering with key stakeholders in the private sector. In order to manage COVID-19 effectively, there has to be a layer in between the seaside and the land side. Just like at the airport, where if an emergency occurs after boarding or a landside transportation problem, there is a dedicated space where we can isolate, screen, swab, or provide acute response without exposing health staff to the ship. Future travel bubbles and increased sea movement, this will become a necessity compared to the current deployment from the hospitals. And people from other countries cannot enter Fiji at this time unless they have specific grounds that warrant consideration. Honourable Speaker, under the Blue Lane Initiative, visitors aboard yachts to Fiji are required to apply via the Department of Immigration and the COVID Risk Mitigation Task Force. And again, I continue to say this is a multi-agency task force. These applications are received and assessed by both the Department of Immigration and this multi-agency task force on a case-by-case basis. Honourable Speaker, these assessments for permission to enter Fiji are undertaken on a risk-based approach, and whether that individual travels from a country that has ongoing local transmission or not. Honourable Speaker, all persons entering Fiji are required to meet a set of very strict conditions that have been formulated based on the current scientific principles and evidence of disease COVID-19. As of 29th of August, 66 yachts have been approved under this initiative, with more yachts and super yachts showing interest to join the Blue Lane Pro initiative. Honourable Speaker, to ensure super yachts can function properly, we are allowing for crew changes. That means crew are being flown into Fiji to join super yachts, allowing these vessels to be properly run and maintained for months at sea whilst in Fiji. And during this exercise, Honourable Speaker, no one is exempt to the quarantine process that we have. Again, the requirements for entry into Fiji are strict. All crew must have a clear pre-departure test, spend 14 days in Fiji in quarantine, then clear border quarantine exit test. Honourable Speaker, currently all yachts are required to be cleared at Port General, and if the vessel has not met the mandatory 14 days quarantine, will be required to be anchored in a designated mooring ground, and its crew will be monitored daily by health officials. After completing the 14 days, the COVID-19 test is conducted, and then only if the negative results will the health quarantine officers issue a certificate of fatigue. This certificate signifies that the yacht and its crew are healthy and will result in the lowering of the yellow flag. And once the flag is lowered, other border agencies will then board and carry out the final clearance paperwork before they will be allowed to cruise within Fiji waters as per cruising permit provided by the Ministry of Itoki Affairs. Honourable Speaker, this system allows a multi-agency support, and at the forefront are our Navy and military teams assisting our health quarantine officers and the medical team, and we also have the border agencies in general who facilitate the necessary clearances. I would like to applaud the vigilance of our Turani corals within the maritime areas who have been calling to find out about yachts that are cruising close to their islands. We need our society to be vigilant. We need a whole of society approach to protect our borders and send the alarm in times of uncertainty. And I must reassure this esteemed House that vessels visiting the islands are indeed cleared by all the relevant authorities and are regularly monitored by the multi-agency team. In conclusion, I wish to draw everyone's attention to COVID-19, and I must stress that COVID-19 is by no means over, and we must all do our part so that we can keep COVID-19 in bay and also continue with our economic reform and economic recovery. I thank you, Honourable Speaker.
I thank the Honourable Minister.